Ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Easern, singing and telling stories from the Salon on Willow Creek.
I need a bed for the night, boys, and my horses need hay. I've been riding that grub line on the hot dish highway, on the great western prairie. I do the work of the Lord. My saddle's my pillow, and I preach from my board. I ride by my compass, and I steer by the stars, like the three holy risemen who followed that beacon and came from afar. I need a bed for the night, boys, and my horses need hay. I've been riding the grub line, the hot dish highway. Now come all you sons of freedom in the old Green Mountain State. Why, sling my pen a little, it will not keep you late. I'll speak of joys and griefs I've had, of the many dark and sunny days, while ranging on the plain, and my many hours of pain. 'Twas in the spring of '84 I left my quiet home and turned my back to my father's door. With the cowboys I would roam. I got a bunking bronco and a leather-banded hat and a great big Colt 6-shooter. You can bet I togged out Pat. I rode the darndest little cuss I'd seen for many a day. He could beat all else at bucking and eat his weight in hay. I've been amongst coyotes, the deer and the grizzly bear, and many a time a quiet meal with the Indians I did share. Oh, but now I'm fully satisfied with rough and tumble life. I'm going back down east again to catch a little wife, and when my children flock around and I take my evening rest, I'll tell them of the times I had with the cowboys in the West. Miles City Weekly, Yellowstone, 10 July, 1885. Previously known, as far as I know, Cowboy Ballad from the Yellowstone River Valley of Montana Territory in 1885. I ran across it just by accident in the Badlands Cowboy, the newspaper of Medora in the Badlands of the Northern Dakota Territory. And then it referenced it back to the Miles City paper where I tracked it down. And it's kind of interesting the way it ran there, where it first published the text of this ballad. It was a report from a local correspondent of a visit to the jail, and he was really there to cover an opium case. Now, again, this is Miles City, Montana in 1885, and he reported that there were, again, his words for the report, 4 Chinamen who had been brought up on opium smoking cases in Miles City. As the prisoners seemed to have only been visitors in the opium joint, it was finally decided to discharge them with a reprimand, so the judge let them off. Judge Brown says, he delivered a lecture on the debilitating effects of the vile narcotic and of the unpleasant position in which the culprits were placed. But nevertheless, he set them free. And then the reporter goes around the jail looking around, see what else he can find to fill out his story. After the Chinamen had regained their liberty, he writes, the journal reporter took a look through the jail. And then he observed farther down, after noticing some details about the cell house. Within the walls of the county jails of Montana, it is surprising to find men of such talent as are possessed by some of those who are now held within the jail of Custer County. Fine penmen, good businessmen, active young fellows, he says. As the reporter passed along, he was handed a paper upon which had been written by one of them lines that not only show a taste toward versification, but also give some indications of a rollicking cowboy's experience, as follows. And then they published the text of this ballad. So it's one of those things that's not uncommon in Western folk song in the 1880s, 1890s, into the 20th century. That the way we get it is, at least ostensibly, the way a reporter recounts it is, I found this in the jailhouse. One of the inmates left it behind when he went, which is a nice scenario. Whether it's true, I have no idea. It does fit in with a couple of things. One of them is that horse I've been riding now for months. The idea that the balladeers are not nameless primitives or something, but they are folk artists. Clearly, the reporter is recognizing this guy, even though a prisoner, he is an artist. Yeah. And then second, I've been making a distinction between settler ballads and cowboy ballads. The settler ballads that moved through the newspapers, you see, and the cowboy ballads that went word of mouth in the days of the open range because there weren't any newspapers around. Okay, this is a bona fide cowboy ballad, 1885, from the Yellowstone range in Montana, and it's brought into the newspaper office through this kind of story that I'm taking from the newspaper where it was published. That's kind of our find of the week. Now we got new findings of the week to present you, but that's a wholly new ballad. And it leads me to think, oh, no, wait a minute. I may be overlooking something. There might be cowboy ballads that are caught in the newspaper net if I learn how to search for them. I'll be doing that. Dr. Kelly back with us tonight. The regular listeners or viewers or whatever we call ourselves, gatherers, know that she's been out with a little bout with the COVID and is back, to all appearances, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You may not feel that way entirely.
We're not too bright-eyed, but I'm getting there.
And we are back out in the world. We've got a program tonight that's a little bit mixed, but there's something, I suppose the theme of it is, I've given Helen, Texas as the title for it, and that's the last ballad we'll be taking up in some detail. But before we do that, we're going to Sweet Betsy from Pike here in a moment. Sweet Betsy from Pike. A lot of people learned or sang Sweet Betsy from Pike in schools, at least people, like boomers my age. And I'm not sure it's out there anymore, and it may be that people are getting a little wise to the content of what seemed earlier like kind of an innocent set of stanzas. You know what number of column we're running in the Kansas newspapers with Plains folk this week, Dr. Kelly?
I don't remember.
Well, we're at Jim and I are at 2,064 Plains folk columns.
That's just amazing.
In the Kansas newspaper release. I didn't ask Skip when I went in and recorded at Prairie Public Studios this week how many radio pieces I've done, but it's 900 and some, and I forget just how many. One of them I'm going to read the text. It'll just take a few minutes because it's about this ballad, Sweet Betsy from Pike. Pour yourself a cup of something and
hot tea, orange tea.
Hot tea, orange tea, chamomile. Calm down. All right, yeah. Sooner or later, I suppose, someone is going to get wise to the hidden storyline of Sweet Betsy from Pike and demand the ballad be outlawed from the public schools. Generations of children have sung the story of the hardy traveling woman, Betsy, crossing the plains to California. The continental journey is the first obvious theme of the ballad. Children remain innocent of the second storyline, the love theme of Sweet Betsy, which has a whiff of the illicit. To begin with, Sweet Betsy is a number from Putt's Golden Songster, first published 1858. The tales of the life of the author, Old Putt, are sketchy, but he had crossed the plains in 1850 and made a career as an entertainer in California, where he would be buried in Greenwood. The audience for the song, however, is certain. Sweet Betsy is a music hall song. It was performed for entertainment in houses of amusement frequented by men in rough and ready goldfield towns. These were listeners who would not have been shocked to observe that at the beginning of the song, Betsy sets out across the country with not her husband, Ike, but her lover, Ike. Following an ambivalent stanza along the Platte where Betsy laid down to repose, listeners would note another progression of the plot. The wagon breaks down with a terrible crash, and out on the prairie there rolled all sorts of trash, and a few little baby clothes done up with care looked rather suspicious, but all on the square. Well, through a series of misadventures, Betsy shows herself competent to every challenge, whereas Ike, well, he's a piker. Not much good in a pinch until somewhere out in the Great Basin, Betsy collapses in exhaustion. Ike is at first mystified, but then he rallies to his heroic moment in the song. He assists Betsy to her feet, encourages her, and in the words of the song, sweet Betsy got up in a great deal of pain. She declared she'd go back to Pike County again. Ike gave a sigh, and they fondly embraced, and they traveled along with his arm round her waist. In California, the two of them marry but soon divorce, and the ending is somewhat of a farce. The story carries an important meaning for its times and audience, however. On the overland trails, women had to assume all sorts of unaccustomed roles. Cooking on the ground, hitching draft animals, caring for children in an open and dangerous landscape. Inevitably, they became more independent. Sweet Betsy from Pike, however, assures men, that's the audience, of the mid-19th century, that sooner or later every woman needs a man around. Today, you can still ascertain the same message in the old ballad, or, and this is the insubordinate part of it, you can conclude a strong woman like Betsy only needs her man around on rare occasions, and otherwise can take care of her own affairs, thank you. Well, this Pike County couple got married, of course, but Ike became jealous and obtained a divorce, and Betsy, well satisfied, said with a shout, "Goodbye, you big lummox, I'm glad you backed out." Sweet Betsy from Pike. Now, that's kind of the story of it. A ballad that we've talked about before here on the Folk School. I was talking about that ballad in my History of the Great Plains class here at NDSU, and that's what brought it to the front of my mind this week, however, because we were talking about migration on the overland trails. The Santa Fe Trail, which is a commercial trail, and the California Trail, and the Mormon Trail, and the Oregon Trail. And so we were doing Sweet Betsy in class, and so I brought it in here. Are we ready to sing it now, I suppose? Huh? Let's see. Okay, this is one that's got a few stanzas to it, so give me a break here. We've got legal help here this evening. Okay. Oh, don't you remember sweet Betsy from Pike, who crossed the big mountains with her lover Ike? 2 yoke of cattle and a large yellow dog, a tall Shanghai rooster and a one-spotted hog, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. One evening quite early they camped on the Platte, was near by the road on a green shady flat. Betsy sore-footed lay down to repose. With wonder Ike gazed on that Pike County road, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Now the wagons broke down with a terrible crash, and out on the prairie rode all sorts of trash. Few little baby clothes done up with care, looked rather suspicious, but all on the square, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Now the Shanghai ran off and the cattle all died. That morning the last piece of bacon was fried, Poor Ike was discouraged and Betsy got mad. The dog drooped his tail and looked wondrously sad, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Well, they stopped at Salt Lake to inquire of the way, when Brigham declared that sweet Betsy should stay. And Betsy got frightened and ran like a deer, while Brigham stood pawing the ground like a steer, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. And they soon reached the desert where Betsy gave out. Down in the sand she lay rolling about. Well, Ike, half distracted, looked on with surprise, saying, Betsy, get up, you'll get sand in your eyes, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Now sweet Betsy got up in a great deal of pain. She declared she'd go back to Pike County again. Ike gave a sigh, and they fondly embraced, and they traveled along with his arm round her waist. Well, they suddenly stopped on a very high hill, and with a wonder looked down upon old Placerville. Ike sighed when he said, and he cast his eyes down, sweet Betsy, my darling, we've got to hang town, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Then Long Ike and sweet Betsy attended a dance. Ike wore a pair of his Pike County pants. Betsy was covered with ribbons and rings. Says Ike, you're an angel, but where is your wings? What a smooth talker, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Well, the miner says, Betsy, will you dance with me? Well, I will, that old hoss, if you don't make too free. But don't dance me hard, do you want to know why? Doggone ya, I'm chock full of strong alkali, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Now this Pike County couple got married, of course, but Ike became jealous and obtained a divorce. Sweet Betsy, well satisfied, said with a shout, goodbye, you big lummox, I'm glad you backed out, singing to-rely, oh-rely, oh-rely. Oh, what grade level do you think that's suitable for, Dr. K?
But that version, we could probably do middle school.
Okay, there's some verses that this is actually the exact text from Putt's Golden Songster, 1858, right out of the California gold camps.
Okay.
So fairly tame by those standards, wouldn't you say?
But there are some other verses. Are you going to share those?
No.
Oh, okay.
And Putt probably wouldn't put them in print in those days either,
Probably
because he'd
not.
wind up in jail. Yes. Paul's here for a moment for some goings on. I'm just home this afternoon from a fairly pleasant time, a real pleasant time in. That's a rare thing to say if you're from DSU. A real pleasant time in Brookings, South Dakota. Imagine that, for Pete's sake. On invitation of Gwen McCausland and her fine staff at the South Dakota Agricultural Heritage Museum. They're hosting the Smithsonian exhibit Crossroads on rural life in America. And I came in to do a bit here on community on the Great Plains in association with that. Did that gig last night and went downtown, and a lot of Hobo Days homecoming was going on downtown there. But I did find a place where I could get a pretty good burger in Brookings yet last night. It was a good stale, but you know what impressed me most?
The dairy.
South Dakota State has a dairy bar on campus, by God. Man, that is a quality of life amenity that I know my alma mater at Oklahoma State, they're restoring the dairy bar on campus there.
Some people might not really know what that means. What's the dairy bar?
That means you got a dairy science program on campus, and their lab makes ice cream and other dairy products, cheese in this case, and then they sell them there to students or anybody else who happens to find their way in. So it's a dairy bar.
Yeah.
On campus. It's cool. It's good quality ice cream too, which you can watch them make through the big glass windows in behind the shop there, behind the counter. You wish you'd been there, don't you?
I do.
I'm just home from that. You're hitting the road here for long, aren't you?
Oh, I still have a while before I'm hitting the road. November 11 on Veterans Day, I'll be doing a program in Valley City with Wes Anderson at the Valley City Museum. He has a series that he does there with bringing in scholars or travelers or people who have a good story to tell. And this Emily Lundy exhibit that's been going around the state, it is about to be set up at Valley City. And so I'll be talking about the exhibit and welcoming people to take a look at it.
Because you are like the world authority on memory artists, right?
I'm not the world authority.
Who is that?
But
See,
I know some things.
And we should say that Wes does a wonderful job with public programming.
Yes.
In as far as a local historical museum, they really do there. And so you'll be there on the 11th, and we're going separate directions that night. You remember that? Oh no! Wait a minute.
You're doing something on the 1st.
Yeah, you're on the 11th. I'm on the 1st. Yeah, this coming week.
Yes.
Tuesday
Right.
the 1st. I should. Yeah, on Tuesday the 1st, I'm headed for Lisbon, North Dakota. I'm looking at the flyer on this thing, Hot Dish Highway with Tom Easer. And of course, people got when in the Extension Network that I've been singing about. My theme song is Hot Dish Highway here with the Willow Creek Folk School. And it happens that there's an extension program in Lisbon that has to do with having public social events and entertainment events that involve the whole community, but which are particularly aimed at getting out seniors in town. And it's the aging in the community, you see. Keep the aged in the community by having lively stuff going on, or at least, semi-interesting stuff, in my case, I hope. They're having a hot dish contest. They're having a hot dish contest. For those down south, what we're talking about is a cover dish, a casserole contest.
Potluck.
Yeah. It's yet a question as to whether hot dish is an open compound or a closed compound. I prefer hot dish with no space. But I do like the capitalized dish, hot dish, no space, capital H, capital D. Yeah, hot dish. Mm-hmm. But they'll be having a hot dish cook-off in Lisbon that night. Anyone attending the event is welcome to participate in the hot dish cook-off. Either bring a dish or share, or just come and eat. But they are selling tickets. Okay, I checked in this afternoon. They've sold 50 tickets, and they're only going to sell 60.
Oh.
So I think we're going to be a sellout for it. But I don't think it's me. I think it's the hot dish.
And what was the entry fee?
I don't know.
You're supposed to bring a can.
Oh, canned goods. It's one canned good item for the Ransom County Food Pantry. Remind me to load
I will.
a number of items to carry along.
I will.
And drop them in.
Oh, we have some people chiming in about dairy.
Yes.
Jess Clark at Walla Walla Community College now.
She doesn't have a dairy
bar.
bar.
They don't have a dairy, but she says we have cattle, and they're going to serve them up in their culinary program. So sort of related there.
Well, we've got the meat lab here.
Yeah.
NDSU Meats is a fixture, and SDSU has that too. And you sampled the hobo sticks, right? I brought you hobo sticks. Yeah, you ate them
that's
for
what
supper.
I ate today. Yes.
Those are hobo
I
sticks.
didn't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
I got one. You got one package.
Well, that's the same. It's what you had one and I had one.
Well, I could have eaten the second one.
There's a
But
package in the
they
fridge.
wouldn't.
You can dip into them tomorrow.
Nancy Kelly would like to know if she'd find a dairy bar at K-State.
Yes, K-State does have a dairy bar. I've heard from people at K-State. They have an active dairy bar. It's got a name, but I can't tell you what that is.
Okay.
But it's the same deal. It's tied to the dairy science program. We need one of those here, don't we?
Yeah. Do you see that I snuck a card in front of the farm?
What was it you were sneaking in over here?
This is a lovely handmade card from a Facebook friend. We've never met in person, but we have been kind of pen pals.
See, when you put it on there, I thought that was an owl. It's an upside down
It's an
cat.
upside down cat. This is from Laura. You'll probably see her in Chatline as Laura Jane.
Oh.
She has Braddock roots, so we had that in common since I take students out there. And she made this lovely card that arrived today.
It is beautiful.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura volunteers many hours at a shelter, a pet shelter,
I know she
an
does.
animal shelter. So she might want to put the name of that in there if she's still on and let people know she loves cats.
And I'll mention all these events that we've been talking about. That those are posted on the timeline somewhere around the Willow Creek Folk School there on the Plains Folk page.
Okay.
I dumped them all in there, including yours coming up on
Well,
the
thank you. Von Rothenberger says, reminds me I've not been to the Call Hall Dairy Bar at K-State.
There you
in a
go.
while.
Call Hall.
Call Hall.
It's in Call Hall, but it's got a name for the dairy bar itself.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe that was it.
We're going to move on to another ballad, and we'll get back to the chat line, yeah. And it's kind of the feature ballad of the evening. It's called Hell in Texas. And this is one we're depositing in the Willow Creek songbag this week. It is one that I've known of for, maybe a half century, but never sang much because, well, it seemed to be just about that South Texas brush country, and I didn't relate to that very much. And then I'm discovering new things about old ballads all the time. Sometimes discovering whole new ballads, like that first one tonight, but often then an old song, it turns out to have aspects to it and origins to it that make it interesting as the Dickens, or in this case, interesting as the devil, we should say. The song Hell in Texas, and Dr. K is about to clue us in on the provenance of this song.
All right. The attributed origins of Hell in Texas have been murky and various, but recent research moves back the date and provides a plausible narrative of lineage. First, we can dispel much of what has been said on the subject. A standard reference on folk song gives 1910 as an earliest date, apparently on the basis of publication by John Lomax in Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads. The earliest known text now, however, dates from 1892 in a newspaper for U.S. military veterans. One scholar situates the collection of the song in the famous Buckhorn Saloon of San Antonio, which seems to be another association with Lomax, as he is known to have collected there. This scholar gives a date of 1909, but obviously this too is well downstream of the ballad's origin. Some newspaper sources attribute Hell in Texas to the well-known ranch poet Larry Chittenden, but there is no record he lived in the South Texas brush country, the setting for the song. He appears merely to have been the author of an answer song, Texas, a Paradise. Rhetorical anomalies in the 1892 text indicate this is not the original text of the ballad. Origins lie earlier in the 19th century, and a plausible, if imprecise, origin story has emerged. The apparent point of origin is historic Fort Brown on the Rio Grande, as recounted by a correspondent of the New York Sun in 1907, shortly after the notorious Brownsville affair had brought the place national attention. The correspondent noted that irrigation was making the Brownsville vicinity a garden spot, dispelling negative images of the locality. Many years ago, he recounts, a private belonging to the United States 6th Cavalry, while stationed at Fort Brown, wrote a poem entitled Hell in Texas. The poem was printed on slips on the old Army press at Fort Brown and attained a wide private circulation among the soldiers on the Texas frontier. The text published with this narrative is the one here produced. Notably, all texts of the ballad, with the exception of the Buckhorn Bar text, have direct military lineage from military service on the Mexican border. The song circulated far north on the plains via newspaper publication, generally referencing soldier experience.
Okay, tell us a little bit about this country in South Texas.
Okay. The ballad recounts an encounter with the environment of the South Texas brush country, a recognized and thorny ecoregion, gently rolling, acidic soils, a country of impenetrable shrubland as described by the Texas A&M Forest Service. Rich in wildlife, beautiful and bizarre, the region is described by one naturalist while lauding its biodiversity as an apparent barren no man's land. The acacia-ridden, thorny landscape seems bereft of life. Fort Brown was a military outpost established in the region during the Mexican War, garrisoned by Confederates during the Civil War, and retained as a federal post for border protection after the war, until being temporarily deactivated following the Brownsville affair. With the restive stage of the border during the Mexican Revolution, Fort Brown was reactivated in 1914 and made the headquarters of the Brownsville Military District. Over the next several years, National Guardsmen from multiple prairie states were deployed to the border, where they encountered the song Hell in Texas, resulting in its dissemination up the plains as far as North Dakota. As this sketch of the ballad, Hell in Texas, is being composed, detachments of National Guardsmen from several prairie states, including North Dakota, are in service on the Mexican border.
Launching into this, I'll mention a couple of things. Dr. K was not reading the footnotes, and we didn't intend that she should, but there are citations in newspapers: Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and North Dakota, all through there. So the ballad, it's like it's an percolator. It makes its way all the way up to North Dakota by 1916. Also, there are a number of stanzas in this, and so when I get to the middle, I'll be pausing to shift pages a little bit here. And we're launching in on Hell in Texas. We're going to hell in a handbasket. Now the devil in hell, we're told, was chained 1,000 years, he there remained. He never complained, nor did he groan, but determined to start up a hell of his own, where he could torment the souls of men without being chained in a prison pen. So he asked the Lord if he had on hand anything left when he made this land. Now the Lord said, yes, I had plenty on hand, but I left it down there on the Rio Grande. The fact is, old boy, the stuff is so poor, I don't think you'd use it in hell anymore. But the devil went down to look at the truck, and he said it had come as a gift he was stuck. For after examining it carefully and well, he concluded that the place was just too dry for hell. So in order to get it off of his hands, the Lord promised the devil to water the lands. For he had some water, or rather some dregs, a regular cathartic and smell like bad eggs. Hence the deal was closed and the deed was given, and the Lord he went back to his home up in heaven. And the devil said, then I have all that is needed to make a good hell, and hence he succeeded. insert remarks from your dad at this point. He began to put thorns on all of the trees and mixed up the sand with millions of fleas and scattered tarantulas all along the roads. Put thorns on the cactus and horns on the toads. He lengthened the horns of the Texas steers and put an addition on the rabbit's ears. It put a little devil in the broken bronco steed, and he poisoned the feet of the centipede. Now the rattlesnake bites you, the scorpion stings, and the mosquito delights you with its buzzing wings. The sandburrs prevail, and so do the ants, and those who sit down need half-whole soles on their pants. Well, the devil then said that throughout the land he managed to keep up the devil's own brand. And all would be mavericks unless they bore marks of scratches and bites and thorns by the score. Now the heat in the summer is 110 and too hot for the devil and too hot for man. The wild boar roams through the black chaparral. It's a hell of a place that he has for hell. The red pepper grows on the banks of the brook. The Mexican use it when all that they could. Just dine with the Mexican and then you will shout, I've hell in the inside as well as the out. Now the original texts had no racist language in it. As the story got into the hands of 20th century guardsmen from states like Kansas, Nebraska, and North Dakota, it acquired racist language, which I've deleted and kind of flipped back to the old trooper terminology from the 19th century. Progress is something of a myth. The text I was singing was, which one was it? I think it was the 1892 text. No, it was the Go-to-Boat text that was printed, published in the 20th century in the Go-to-Boat, Oklahoma newspaper. New York correspondent hunted it up down there in 1907. Well, we're kind of living the climatic definition of grace here for a few days, Dr. K, sitting here in North Dakota. You know what I'm talking about?
As the weather changes.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of a lull in the progress toward winter.
But it is quite beautiful outside.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yellows and reds and
it's beautiful.
Golds, browns.
Tomorrow will be a day to throw a steak on a grill, I think.
And maybe wash the windows.
I'd just love to do that. Yes. Can I help?
You may.
No. This week's calendar ballad. Well, let's see here. Okay, let me wait while I get some pages. I'm missing one.
Right? Do I have one for you?
No, I bet there's one in the printer, though.
Oh. Go look.
Can you check while I mark time here? Yeah, but we're coming up on the calendar ballad, which is a little bit of ode to, I'm not sure you can call it this anymore, what we used to call Indian summer. The time when that first frost comes. And then after that, you get some days that are not really cold. Or you know it's coming, but you got this time of grace. So pardon my Lutheran terminology on all of this there. I hear steps coming up the stairs.
Nothing in the printer.
Well, then we're just going to do without of it. So I've got a little ballad here called First Frost. So long to the mosquitoes, farewell to all the flies. I hope that every biting bug in all Dakota dies. There are things about the summer that we will not miss at all. But I feel a little heartache come the first frost in the fall. We're cleaning up the garden that we planted in the spring. We're canning tomatillos and we're pickling everything. We'll roast the birds of autumn and we'll live upon the land. All the summer's bounty we have frozen, dried, and canned. Now the propane man is coming and he's topping up our tank. We started our snow blower just to make sure it would crank. We're rolling up hammocks, getting out the Nordic ski, bringing in the best geraniums that we don't want to freeze. So now I'm feeling better about the onset of the fall. We'll hole up and we'll read the books we've stacked along the hall. We will recall the summer in the waning winter light and surrender to the quiet of a long, long winter night. Didn't mean to make you sad there, Dr. Kelly, because we're still where the deer and the antelope play. We're seldom is heard a discouraging word in the sky. Are not cloudy day. Now the propane man is coming and he's topping our tank. We started our snow blower just to make sure it would crank. We will recall the summer in the waning winter light, surrender to the quiet of a long, long winter night, where the deer and the antelope play. Seldom is heard of the scourge skies are not cloudy all the day. No, the skies are not cloudy all day. Dr. Kelly.
We now conclude today's edition of the Folk School on Willow Creek. We invite you to join us again next Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time for more songs and stories.